Let's bring in Jamie Shea, the former NATO Deputy Assistant Secretary General for Emerging Security Challenges and Senior Fellow at the Friends of Europe think tank. Jamie, welcome back. Good to see you. So, tomahawks for Ukraine or not? Who is President Trump listening to?
Well, as your correspondent in Washington just said, Trump seemed to be listening to the Ukrainians at the beginning of the week, and his Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, was adopting sort of quite a forward-leaning pro-Ukrainian, tough-on-Russia stance when he was at a meeting of NATO defense ministers. But a two-hour call with Putin seems to once again to have brought Trump now into a position much closer to Putin, maybe thinking on the back of his success in achieving a ceasefire in Gaza that he now has momentum for peace negotiations and he can push on Ukraine. We'll have to wait and see. But Trump never made a decision in favor of sending those Tomahawk cruise missiles. There was always a question mark over them. And number two, what Zelensky is looking for, of course, are Tomahawks, but a lot of other things too, Jamie. He's hoping to do a $90 billion deal with the United States for the supply of a lot of U.S. military equipment. Ukrainians have been in states this week going around U.S. defense industries like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, also looking for deals. And he's also looking, Zelensky, to conclude a drone agreement with the United States, which would give Ukraine access to a lot of technology, but also mean that the United States would buy Ukrainian drones and bring in some income. So let's not just look at Tomahawks, let's look at that wider picture. Even if Zelensky doesn't get the Tomahawks, providing he can get some of those defense cooperation agreements, I think he'll still see the visit as being a successful one.
And what message would it send if President Trump were to approve or deny those requests for those weapons?
Well, of course, it's very important, I think, particularly with winter coming and the Russians launching these massive strikes on Ukraine's energy grid and railway network system. I think it's very important for Zelensky that he gets things like Patriot air defense systems, the things that the United States has been supplying in the past. Otherwise, it's going to be a very difficult winter for the Ukrainians too. He also wants this U.S. investment in Ukraine's domestic defense industry because, as Zelensky says, Ukraine is now providing 50% of all of the weapons that it uses itself. And even when it comes to Tomahawks, let's not forget, Jamie, that Ukraine does have very good long-range systems of its own, like the Flamenco. It's been very successful at developing long-range drones and ballistic missiles. And even without Tomahawks, you've seen that Ukraine has been quite successful at hitting Russian oil refineries in recent weeks. And as Zelensky puts it, reducing Russian oil refining capacity by 25%. So Ukraine is not bereft of its own resources in this matter.
Does this meeting signal something of a shift in United States strategy towards Ukraine, or is Trump using it more as leverage with Russia?
Well, I think we're really going to have to wait and see, frankly, how the meeting goes today. It's always a little bit unpredictable, as we know, when Zelensky visits the White House. And secondly, what Trump's stance is going to be. I mean, in recent weeks, Europeans and Ukrainians have been sort of happy that, Trump was taking a much tougher line on Russia, calling Russia a paper tiger, suggesting that the U.S. supported Ukraine, liberating all of its territory, hinting at more sanctions, for example, on Russian oil exports, clamping down on India's ability to import Russian oil, suggesting that Trump would do the same for China. So I think the Ukrainians were sort of kind of hoping that, Trump had finally chosen his camp instead of going back and forth between Moscow and Kiev, and was willing now to really up the ante to take those tough measures which would bring Putin to the negotiating table. So the Americans have built in some leverage now, and the Tomahawks are part of that to put Putin under pressure. But whether Trump is, having created the leverage, is really willing to use it, well, that's what we're going to have to wait and see after today at the White House and in forthcoming weeks up to this summit in Budapest.
Jamie, good to see you. Thanks for that. Jamie Shea, the former NATO Deputy Assistant Secretary General.